Torage the Warrior here, and this video is going to be about questions and keybinds and some vocab. So basically, I did say before that I was going to do some question answer kind of videos, and I did receive a lot of good questions about that. And if I didn't answer any of your messages you sent to me, it is because I was trying to save it for a answer video, but it's kind of all getting confused. I did set up an email now that I'm going to use for this. And that is Warrior.Torage at gmail.com. So any questions you have, send them there. And if you asked a question that I didn't answer, I didn't write you back about, send that again there as well, so I can get that and maybe put it on a video here if it's good. A couple things about the questions though. Make sure you've watched my most up-to-date videos. I do update, videos pretty much every time theory changes at all significantly. So make sure you've seen the most recent video. Don't look at my patch 3.4 video and ask questions about that. That's yeah, don't do that. Also make sure you've seen the add-ons and interface videos, so you're not asking questions about things that I've already talked about. So just that quick guidelines there. Otherwise, send them on in. If I don't know, I will certainly research it and try to get that answered for you. And I have a few questions to answer right now, and that is one of them is I got a good mail a while ago about some vocabulary things. So when I had some confusion about what some words mean, and so I've kind of broken down a few things here. Most of you probably already know these. If not, this is what they mean. First one is proc, and a lot of people use this word a lot, and a lot of people actually don't know what this means. And it stands for programmed random occurrence. And so anything that occurs randomly is a proc. So things like blood surge gives you a 30% chance on making your next slam instant and free. So that is a proc. It is a programmed random occurrence. It's programmed to randomly occur 30% of the time. Also things like trinkets and weapon enchants are oftentimes procs. So things that come off a cooldown, or things that when you use this then you get that, those are not procs. Those are just when you get this then you get that sort of things. So like taste for blood, when you Ren ticks this many times then you get an overpower. That's not a proc. Whereas something like sudden death, where you get a Colossus smash, that is a proc. So that's what proc means. Another thing I talk about a lot is GCD, ICD, and CD. GCD is global cooldown. So when I use something like Battle Shout here, it triggers the global cooldown. It puts Battle Shout on cooldown, but it puts everything else on the global cooldown. So everything puts it on the global cooldown. There are a few things that are not on the global cooldown, like Berserker Rage and Heroic Strike, that have their own cooldown but don't trigger everything else. So things that are what's on the GCD and what's not on the GCD is always very important to know, because if it's not on the GCD, then that means you can use it at the same time or very close together with something that is on the GCD. So again, that's global cooldown. And cooldown, you probably know that one, that's CD. And then ICD is internal cooldown. And that's on things like weapon procs sometimes have internal cooldowns, but usually it's referred to when you're talking about trinkets. Things like this, where when you deal damage, you have a chance to gain X amount of stat for a while. So, and that is how those work, is they do have an internal hidden cooldown. So it usually has a very high chance to proc, which is why everything happens kind of in the beginning. So you start hitting the target, and it usually goes off in the first few swings. Lots of them have as high as like a 50% chance to proc, like right away it went off, Surge of Conquest. And then it won't happen again for a while, even though it has a high chance to occur, and that's because it has an internal cooldown. They're usually 45 seconds to a minute and a half. And it's good to know the internal cooldown. You can always look up the internal cooldown. Usually on Wowhead, you can look up a trinket, and then it'll read the comments, and people will tell you conflicting information on what the internal cooldown is usually. But it's good to know that, and that could make or break a trinket. Like I know back in Ulduar there was the Mjolnir runestone, and then in Forge of Souls there was the Needle Encrusted Scorpion. Now, even though the Needle Encrusted Scorpion had better stats and proc for more armor pen, it actually wasn't as good as a Mjolnir runestone because it had a worse uptime, and uptime is another thing. You know, just that self-explanatory how much time it is up or active. So you know, since it had a shorter internal cooldown, and it was proc on hit, not on crit. It was actually a better trinket than the Needle Encrusted Scorpion. So that's just an example of how that could make a difference. Another few acronyms here. We got DPS, you all know what that means. HPS, if you're a healer, you know what that means, healing per second. DPS is damage per second, of course. And a few warrior-specific things I've talked about a little bit are RPS and DPR. RPS is rage per second, and rage per second, you know, is calculated by taking how much rage you get per swing, and, you know, having a certain amount of time, calculating in haste and, you know, your hit chance and stuff like that, and seeing how much on average rage you get per second. And that's a good way to determine, you know, what a valid rotation is. You know, obviously, for most people, hitting Heroic Strike every single time is not a valid rotation because you don't have enough RPS to do it. Another thing is DPR, which is damage per rage, and what that is that's just the average amount of damage you get per point of rage. So something like Heroic Strike will have a lower DPR than Raging Blow, because Raging Blow costs less rage and does more damage. So you're getting more damage per point of rage per Raging Blow. So that's why Raging Blow would be higher on the priority than, say, Bloodthirst, because it's got a higher DPR. And another thing is DPSE or EDPS, which is effective DPS. And that's just a slightly different way of calculating DPS, and that just basically takes the entire duration of the encounter and divides it by the number of seconds and gives you your DPS that way, which usually ends up being slightly different than your live DPS, but somewhere around the same, unless you die early on or something like that. So if you do all your burst damage and pull aggro and die immediately, your DPS is going to be really high, but your EDPS is going to be really low because it'll count the whole rest of the encounter. Every second will count as a 0. So, and that's what, like, why that's important is that's what world rankings and things for DPS and World of Logs is calculated. It's you're ranked by your EDP. A couple more questions I had. Another recently, someone asked me how I change targets, and I usually use tab. I have tab set to so it doesn't always change targets, but it targets the next enemy player, and you can set that up in the keybinds. I have it just set up to target enemy players, and because I use that for PvP. PvE, I have shift tab to target next enemy, so that does that. It's just more convenient because PvP I'm using shift and everything. I'm trying to move as fast as possible, so usually I just have quick just tab switch targets. Also for targeting in arena, lots of times I have the arena unit frames. I used to have Gladius, but Gladius broke and I haven't found a way to fix it yet. So Gladius does the same thing, just it's a little easier to read. For arena, it'll show your enemy frames over here on the side, and I can click those in order to switch targets, which is especially helpful in 5v5 because trying to pick one person out of 10 people is nigh impossible. So that's how I do my targeting. And last here I have people ask me some questions about, I also promised a video about keys, key binding, and your layout on the keyboard and how your hand sits on the keyboard and how you should position there, and just comfortable keystrokes and things like that. So here's a little video about that. Alright, so here's my keyboard, and this is my screen. So of course I use WASD for movement. This thing is zooming in on its own. So I use WASD for movement, and normally people have E and Q for strafe, which is that. Instead I use A and D. So I don't know if I can. A and D. So that's just because a lot of first-person shooters are like that. Q and E, I switch those with A and D. So I switch D with E and A with Q from the default, and those originally rotated me, but there's never any reason why you'd want to rotate instead of just, you know, turning with the mouse. Turning with the mouse is much faster, of course, as well as, you know, quick turning like that. So since that, I actually have Q and E bound to abilities now. I think this is Heroic Leap and this is Slam. So I have that, and then I also press tilde, which is this little key here. I'm pretty sure is called the tilde key, all the way through 6. Now I got these giant spider hands, so I can do Shift A to strafe, and then 6 all the way over there. So I can Shift 6. So I can use Heroic. Oh, someone's giving me stuff. What the hell? All right, so we have tilde through 6, and then Shift tilde through 6, and is how that works out here. I don't know if how well you can see it on my screen. Is I've got 1 through 6 in the bottom row there, and the top row is actually S 1 through 6, and that is actually Shift 1 through 6. So I've got 1, then Shift 1, then 2, and Shift 2, all the way down the line there. And that's how that works. The rest of them here are, you see things like N2 and N8. That's actually on my my mouse here. Has a 12-button keypad, so I have 1 through 8 or 1 through 12 on here, and 2 and 8 are just the ones positioned. Here, let me get my other hand. Best for my thumb there. So I got 2 is right there, and then 8 is right back on the knuckle. And this thing comes with these little rubber. Where did they go? These little rubber tab things here that you can stick on. So I use that so this catches my back knuckle. So that's 2 and 8 there. And I have those there because on my old mouse it's just a 2-button mouse under the thumb here. And those were just the most comfortable positions for those. And the rest of these do things too, but those are the 2 most important ones. So those are the only ones that are right here, 2 and 8, then Shift 2 and 8, and also mouse button 3, which is just a scroll wheel click. And so it's Shift 3 and 3, and then the other ones up here you see you got F and G, which is just right next to Bobcat. Shut up! I'll kick you. F and G, which are just right next to D, just F G, and then also up there I've got number pad 1 and page down, which is actually Shift 1, because this pad here actually translates to this. This is the number pad here. So this counts as page down. So if you see 3, yeah, 3. See how we have 3 here, and this is page down. So that's Shift 3 would be page down. So that's how I have all that organized. So and all the rest of the number pad keys are right here in this sort of bar. That's why I have these 12 separate from the rest of them over here. Some of these are also shift modifiers as well as Q and E. And that's basically how my UI works. Alright, that just about wraps up this video. My next video is been kind of some hard trouble making. It is going to be a Fury Warrior PvP video. Fury is not doing as well as Arms right now in the arena, but that's probably going to change in the next patch if you've been keeping up with the notes. So I'll be good on that, and it's pretty awesome in Battlegrounds, but I'm going to be showing you guys a bit how I do Fury PvP. That's that. Thanks for watching.